I got a couple notes here, and I wanted to do a little bit of a poll with the people. We got a small audience. And so I have the deck queued up to talk about performance measurement and attribution. It's a topic that I talk about a lot. It's publicly available. But I also thought that there's some really timely topics that I was thinking about just going off the cuff. So things that are different. So maybe just a show of hands. If people want the attribution and really want that, please raise your hand. If you want me to sort of speak broadly and try to bring the most value in a ton of topics, feel free to raise your hand. Number 2. Love it. So we're going to ditch the slides. People don't want the slides, and let's just talk. I'm going to go a little rogue here. When I come to these things, and I love going off the cuff because I think it's like creative and I can really feel the audience and talk through it. The first thing, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot, and I think to level set with everyone, we have to level set on the state of the market. Before we even think about go-to-market strategy or marketing strategy or advertising or attribution, we got to level set on where the market is. The reality of the current situation is that companies have less money. They have less cash. Marketing budgets are being scrutinized. The overall demand for most categories is going down. There are exceptions, artificial, AI, artificial intelligence, and things like that. But for the most part, the amount of organic market demand for people buying all of your products is going down. What happens when the overall demand for categories goes down is that the number of customers that you get goes down. Therefore, customer acquisition cost goes up, and therefore we have to rebalance sales and marketing budgets, so we're seeing budgets going down. When people feel that way, they think about, or I hear a lot, we got to be able to do more with less. We got to be able to do more. And my position on this is we actually have to do less, and we have to do them fucking phenomenally. We have to pick out what are the right things that we need to do. How do we execute them flawlessly? I built my company basically on LinkedIn and podcast. And then I look at some of our customers or people in the market. They have 10 different programs running. They take $1 million. They break it into 10 groups of $100,000. They put it all over the place, and none of the things are actually working. My position is that you'd want to find one program and push it to the limit like I've done with LinkedIn and a podcast. So now that we've gone through the state of the market, I feel like when I come up and talk, a lot of people that come to my talks are looking for like some shiny new object. Like that I'm going to come in and talk about like how TikTok's going to grow their fintech company or YouTube Shorts or Reddit or Quora, and I'm going to talk about all those things. So I think they're early in the journey. But the reality is that the way to grow your business today is tried and true. It's tried and true. I've been talking about it for years. I'm not gonna belabor the point, but I really want to go through them. What I'm trying to communicate now is what are the things that you can do tactically to drive revenue in the next 90 days? What are the things that you can do? Step 1 is to focus on how do we better convert demand with sales. We already get people to our website. People already fill out a demo form. We're already making cold calls. We're already doing pitches. How do we get more of the people that are already in our funnel into close won deals? And how does marketing assist with that? Number 1 is to optimize the handoff process between when someone asks for a demo or to talk to sales to the amount of people that actually get into that meeting. There was a recent study that came out between Chili Piper and Novatic that showed that 97 out of 100 SaaS companies they surveyed do not offer a direct calendar link to book. So a buyer will come into your website, qualified buyer, will actually say, I want a demo. Maybe won't hear back from the SDR team for 2 days. And then if you get 100 demos, on average, only 30 of the 100 that are qualified will actually sit on a meeting with your sales team, which means that 70 qualified buyers asked for a demo and never got one because the follow-up process was not seamless and we didn't make it easy for them. How do we tighten that process? We use a calendar link. So people can come in, they fill out the form, and they can book a meeting with me or someone on our team. And we have an 80% conversion from the demo form into it. So a SaaS company, on average, 30, 40%. Companies that are doing this way are seeing 50, 60, 70% conversion rates to meetings. You can double your pipeline just by fixing this process, and it's basically free. That's one thing. The next thing is to think about how are we going to convert more of our people that we already have on our website into these types of conversions. There's basic website CRO, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm like the best conversion rate optimization person out there. There are people that are very good at testing these things. But we have to be able to figure out, if we have 10,000 people on our website, how are we able to move more people to the action that we want? The next thing, and this is, now we're starting to get into demand capture, right? So demand capture, when people are looking to buy your category or your company, how are we able to get more of those people into a sales meeting? They might be on G2, looking at reviews. They might be in Google doing searches. They might be on your website or your competitor's website. How are we able to get more of those buyers into our funnel? Companies, it might be different, a little bit different now, but in my experience, companies dramatically overspend on search, both organic and paid, but a lot of wasted money on paid. Going into the budget and really scrutinizing how much pipeline are we creating with this campaign, with this keyword, and then being able to recoup a lot of that budget, give it back to the company to improve margin, EBITDA, reduce burn, or to go and take those and reallocate them to programs that are going to actually work. And now I want to get into, I think, what a lot of people sort of came here for, is like, those topics are well discussed. Now, how are we actually going to go out and create new demand? When market demand is declining, how do we actually go out and get people that are not interested or not thinking about buying our product and show them why they should be considering buying the product right now? Part of that's messaging and product marketing and things like that, but a lot of that is actually content distribution, content repurposing, delivery of overall information. And so I'm going to break down 3 strategies that we use to create demand at my company and we help our customers do. So step 1 is an organic thought leadership flow. This is not an SEO strategy. This is not an ebook strategy. It starts with a live event. It could be this. It could be a webinar that I do every week. It starts with a live event. That live event then gets converted into a long-form podcast. The podcast is nice. Then all that stuff gets chopped up into micro video, mainly for LinkedIn. You all know where your buyers are, but for the most part in B2B, we're going to have a lot of opportunity on LinkedIn with video. We create those videos, we distribute them on LinkedIn, which then creates a feedback loop of insights from customers. What do our customers want to hear? What topics are resonating? What's working? People start coming to our events. It creates a community around that, and you start to have this organic flywheel. Just like HubSpot talked about, everyone ran the HubSpot SEO strategy in 2014, 2015, and many companies still run it today. Every B2B company needs to be running this organic thought leadership strategy built for social, not for search. The next thing is focusing on a very specific set of target accounts and running paid distribution on social media channels to distribute content to them. That could be video content. That could be customer stories and case studies. That could be category or product marketing messaging. It could be news that your company produces about the next funding round, about the new pricing and packaging that you released, the new features that you released. And pick the accounts that you really want to go after. Some people will call this an account-based marketing strategy. Pick the accounts that you really want to go after, that you have a high propensity to win, that you have a great value prop, that your sales team has already been able to close repeatably, and distribute content to them all the time, an always-on engine. And then there's a relatively new one that we've been testing out at my company. People that follow me on LinkedIn might have started to see it, where we start to take website content that we create and then repurpose it for social. For instance, if your company's big on proprietary data and ebooks, then you could take that ebook, make it into a 5-slide carousel, and then distribute it for an ad, organic, through your CEO's profile, your evangelist profile, so taking website content and bringing that into an organic social flow. Now I want to talk about some of the things that are emerging. Some people might have come for like, what are the next things? I already have the thought leadership strategy. I already am running ABM. What's next for me? Where should I be focused? I'm going to talk about 4 things that we're seeing in the market that are working really well. Number 1 is YouTube Shorts. We're starting to see YouTube Shorts really emerge. In the same way that TikTok, the difference for B2B companies, but when you think about like LinkedIn or website content versus YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and TikTok, is that it's way harder to create content for those platforms. Way harder to create content for a TikTok or a YouTube Short than it is to write a couple sentences and post it on LinkedIn or write a blog. The creative requirements go way up. We're seeing YouTube Shorts work really well by taking the videos, making them vertical that I already create, distributing them on YouTube, At the moment, we're seeing a lot of inbound from SMB, just to be clear. So this is not like it's an organic, broad strategy. At the moment, our early signals are that it's working in SMB. The next thing that we're seeing that I think is really interesting, specifically working with companies that sell to CFOs or the finance department and the cybersecurity or CISO and security department, is Reddit paid ads that are targeted based on threads that you know your customers are searching or looking for. So it's almost like taking some of your long tail SEO strategy and then replicating it inside of Reddit. When it comes to a creative standpoint, what we're seeing work best, and people are going to be really surprised by this, is actually that meme content is working the best. And we're targeting CISOs and CFOs and VPs of finance, but being able to build content that's native to Reddit, what we're really seeing is that meme content is working the best. We're getting some, similar to Reddit, we're getting some really interesting signals at the moment on Quora. So Quora, people are asking questions. Quora has a great sort of flow of once you start consuming some content, they're very good at sending emails and bringing you new content like it. And both on a paid and organic strategy, I think that Quora has some really interesting things out there. And then lastly, TikTok. So I've been invested a lot on TikTok. I think that it's best for companies that have a horizontal product or a large TAM. If you have a 500 account list on TikTok, or if you have a 500 total TAM accounts, then TikTok might not be the right place, and you should think more about like a focused ABM strategy. But if you're selling a Miro or something like that that has tons of different customers, you can get so much scale with a product like TikTok. A couple nuances on LinkedIn as I continue to dial in and evolve my strategy. When I started on LinkedIn, it was all written posts. Then people started to plagiarize my written posts. So I would like post something that day, and then I would wake up the next day and someone in like Germany would translate it into German and write the same shit that I wrote the day before. That I stopped doing text posts for the most part and started only going into video for that pure reason. That was in 2019. I was one of the first early movers of video on LinkedIn, and it's paid off really well for me as I've continued to execute for it. Now, as we think about the next stage, some of the early signals that I'm seeing is that if you're able to do good content in a TikTok or a YouTube short and use those as testing grounds, and then take that content and put it onto LinkedIn, that it's working incredibly well because it's a pattern interrupt. People are not expecting to see vertical video that's created natively in TikTok on a LinkedIn. The 3 times I've tested this, I've had more than 250,000 impressions on each of those posts, when my average at the moment is about 50 or 60. So 5x better reach when I have a post like this, which I think is an incredible opportunity. It also forces us to start thinking more into where's the world going on social. All social platforms outside of LinkedIn are converging on vertical short form video. All the ones that I mentioned there. And LinkedIn will eventually need to change their product to match what consumers need. All the other platforms are just ahead of LinkedIn. And so being able to understand how to create short-form native video content now, so that when LinkedIn inevitably catches up, you know how to create that content and you can take advantage of that on LinkedIn, I think is a huge opportunity. Whew. All right. I covered some things. I think I'm actually going to hit a couple of attribution topics right now. So let's go that way. Before we get into it, I want to say that attribution and marketing KPIs are the thing that I'm most passionate about overall in marketing and business, because marketing can do so many amazing things for the business, and the metrics that they get scored on by the executive team and the board prevent them from doing all the things that work the best. We're talking about high MQL targets. I'm consulting with a company right now, a 1,000-person company, and we go in and we look at the data, and the reason they come to me is because they're 178% to plan on their MQL target, they're 138% to plan on their stage 0 opportunities, but they're 68% to plan on qualified pipeline, and their sales team's at 54% to quota. So marketing's over here hitting the goals that have been set. The common thing, sales is missing their target because the marketing metrics do not align perfectly with sales team outcomes. Another part of that whole issue is that a company of that stage that has a high volume MQL model is also going to require direct attribution on every lead to quantify ROI, which forces you into 100% performance marketing. When you're in 100% performance marketing, direct attribution, you collect low quality, high volume, low cost leads that do not have intent to buy. That's what happens. And the reason that the MQLs don't reach stage 2 opportunities and why they drop off between stage 0 and stage 1 is because they do have a good fit, they might have a great title, but they don't want to buy the stuff. And so our job as marketers is, before all of our customers start talking to our sales team, how do we get them to want to buy? How do we educate them? How do we create affinity with the company? At some points, I've called this running sales at scale. Like, you could literally go in, you could look at 10 recorded demos, you could say, what are the common themes that we're talking about in the demo? What key questions and objections are being presented? And then how do I create content and information for all that stuff so that our sales team doesn't have to do a demo one-on-one? We can run and create that information with our customers at 1,000 accounts, 1,000,000 accounts at a time, using marketing scale versus having our most expensive sales resource talk to someone that doesn't want to buy. And so when we think about attribution, let's do a couple of slides. People might have seen this before, but I'm going to reiterate it. The way that B2B buyers buy has fundamentally changed. Yeah, you could see pictures and things like that. For the most part, up until maybe the mid-2010s, we were in an analog buying era. B2B buyers bought face-to-face at events and conferences. B2B companies didn't care about their website. It was a lot of field sales. Like, we were starting to change into inside sales, but it was a lot of analog one-to-one buying. We moved into a website area where B2B companies started taking their website seriously, SEO content, things like that, where buyers would be able to go and get that information and then convert that way, and they would start to do a more independent research on their own before they engage with sales. We know this to be true. 2020 forward, driven by the pandemic and accelerated by the pandemic, we've moved into the dark social era, where B2B buyers and executives, the people that hold the budget and make the decisions, that in 2019, they were not part of a digital community, they did not use LinkedIn every day, they did not go to a weekly virtual event with other CMOs, they didn't do a lot of these things, that during the pandemic, all the executives learned how to do these things. And so it's not just millennials like me anymore that are doing these things. Everyone in B2B is now doing them. They know how to access their peers. They trust their peers more than vendors and more than other things. And so they're going to go to the community or LinkedIn or different places to get recommendations of what problems they should be solving, what products they should be buying, who are the right vendors, how much they should be paying, and they get that information directly from their peers in the background, completely missed by attribution software. We're talking communities, social networks, content platforms, third-party events, direct word of mouth, internal Slack channels and email. All those places are not being measured by touchpoint-based digital attribution technologies that were created in the early 2010s when internet buying was simple and we were in the analog buying era. I want to present a little bit of data to illustrate this point, and then maybe we'll just get into questions after that. We ran a study at my company over a year. During that year, we closed $21.5 million in net new business. So this is not like a small sample size, okay? This is what we look at leads, we look at qualified opportunities, and we look at revenue. This is what it looks like at the lead level when we look at attribution software. Anyone that looks at their data is going to see the same thing. It's heavily skewed toward organic search and direct traffic because buyers pass through Google when they want to buy to get to your website. We added this thing, how did you hear about us? People have heard me screaming from the rooftop. I've heard so many success stories of companies implementing this and getting key insights about programs that they couldn't prove are working, and then all of a sudden their CEO starts seeing qualified leads come through that say, I found you on LinkedIn, or I heard about you on the podcast, and then all of a sudden their CEO and their executive team are bought into new programs that aren't being measured the right way. This is some of the stuff that you get. You get all the stuff that attribution software doesn't tell you, and these aren't cherry-picked. We get these all the time. You get communities like Revenue Collective or Pavilion, podcast, LinkedIn. Your CEO spoke at the CMX Summit. No surprises here. Gaetano. This is the stuff that you get that you don't get when your attribution software says organic search, direct traffic. We collected that data and then compared the two. So we compared what customers said at the time of conversion against what attribution software was telling us. And this is the difference. So you can see at the lead level, basically way overinflated on organic search and direct. And then social media is underrepresented by about 75%. Podcast, word of mouth, and community not covered at all by attribution software. You can see the differences here called out. Organic search is dramatically overreported. I'm going to skip these. Then we look at actual qualified opportunities. And it actually gets even more dramatic. Look at this. Attribution software says organic search is basically driving all of the business. And when customers say it's actually only one customer said that, same trends. And then let's look at the revenue. This is the money slide, 21.5 million ARR. Look at the differences here. It says that 80% of revenue is coming from search. Customers are saying 1%, 3%. Social media, dramatically underreported. Podcast drives 53% of revenue. Attribution software doesn't catch any of it. Word of mouth is driving 21% of our revenue. Attribution software is barely saying anything. How do we know who are the people that are recommending us business? How do we engage with them in partnerships, affiliates, have them on our podcast, collaborate with them? If we know those people, we'll be able to figure out and be able to drive more revenue from it. The conclusion here is that there is a dramatic difference between demand capture, when people are looking to buy what we're doing or what we're selling, where do they go? Google, affiliate sites, G2s. And when they're not looking to buy and we're creating demand, we actually need a different way to measure these programs. Everyone intuitively knows this, that we're not seeing LinkedIn show up enough in our attribution unless we're doing lead gen. We're not like, we killed our podcast after 10 episodes because we weren't seeing any leads from it. This is the unlock, is that the way that we measure marketing right now only measures certain specific tactics that were typically created in the early 2010s. Search engines, direct link affiliate type of stuff. So we need a new framework. We need a new framework. It's on your right. On your right side, you'll see every company has a software-based attribution setup. And it perfectly tells them what is the path that buyers take when they're ready to buy, typically through Google and into our funnel. And then we need a new thing on the side. I recommend self-reported attribution as a V1. There's many iterations that you can take. It's basically using other primary customer research methods to understand what is actually driving impact for customers. Qualitative interviews, surveys, self-reported attribution, win-loss analysis. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it. But we need to know from customers what types of marketing activities are working. We cannot rely on attribution software solely anymore. And then you can graph it out. And this is a great graph to show executive teams, is what are the best ways to capture demand and what are the best ways to create demand, and looking at them as two completely separate streams. And so deciding when you're doing your LinkedIn paid program, are we trying to capture demand and run lead gen programs? Or are we trying to create demand and deliver content in the feed that creates affinity for buyers that leads to a consideration? We got 5 minutes left. I think that Q&A is part of the most valuable. I sort of went in a bunch of different directions there and tried to pack as much as I could in my 25-minute talk. So if people have questions, something that you're working on, something in the talk that you want to clarify, would love to maybe take a couple of questions from the audience. Cool. Go ahead.
You didn't mention email marketing newsletters, and that seems to be like everybody's got a newsletter today. So what's your opinion on the newsletter?
So I love email. I think email is a great strategy. It just can't be the only strategy. And so I think a lot of companies, when they do this, they'll set up some type of MQL motion to build their database, right? So they'll have people downloading ebooks or doing content syndication. They'll build the database. Then they'll set up an automated nurture flow that doesn't add any value to customers. And then they'll hope that they open 3 emails, MQL score them, and then cold call them. I think that we need to change the strategy around email to one of the many ways that we can distribute high-value content to our customers. And so while a lot of email ends up being conversion or transactionally focused, I think we need to shift it to where, when I was using email really well in 2017, we were selling into hospitals, and a lot of people used email there. And we would take a video podcast that we created, we would embed the video with Wistia into the email, and we would just use it as another distribution channel to get people to go and watch a video podcast. And so I think it's about changing the intent and the mindset around email, not that email is email's clearly an important channel.
And I would even say, if you don't mind me jumping in there, newsletters, LinkedIn newsletters is a very powerful feature on the platform, and most people don't take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So if you're writing a newsletter, start a LinkedIn newsletter, because that subscribe button for your ideal customers to subscribe is a whole lot easier than them putting their email and knowing that they're going to get hit up with this inbox flooding sequence of emails. So LinkedIn newsletters is a great strategy.
Yeah.
Interesting one on your graphs was community. We talk about this quite a lot. What is community to you? Obviously, you've got your podcast, for example, but thank you very much.
Yeah.
This is a lot easier than shouting. Community is one of the points that you had on your graph, right? I know you've got your podcast, for example. What is community to you? What do you think about this kind of community-led model that a lot of companies are starting to speak about for lead gen and awareness?
Yeah. You can look at it as two different ways. So originally, when I was doing this, I actually looked at it like a group of people that are centered around a movement about where the world is going, regardless of where they hang out, right? So whether the people wanted to attend my live Zoom event or listen to the LinkedIn content or read it on our blog or our email, the people are involved in the community without it being like a Slack channel, right? And then as the 2.0, you actually want to be able to aggregate those people so they can help each other as they work. And so we've established a Slack channel, and we're going to actually move it into a different platform in the future. But I've found that communities work the best when people believe in your point of view, not necessarily that you're just collecting, product marketers together, that you actually have a perspective on product marketing and where it's going. And you don't get every product marketer, you get the forward-thinking product marketers or a specific niche inside of it that have the same psychographs that match your target customer. Let's keep going. I love this.
A lot of buying decisions these days are committee consensus. Like there's a lot of people involved, not just one. Have you seen, or how are you seeing people bring all that together into one view so they can figure out like what's working, different personas, maybe have different places they go for info as that deal moves along, from coming into the pipeline all the way through close one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It's part of it is effectively moving from a lead-based model to an account-based model, so that's part of it. And then another part of it is trying to understand who are those people and then being able to provide content and air cover to them proactively when you know that they're in the deal. And so, for instance, like in our business, the CMO typically owns the budget for if they're going to buy us, but the CFO might be involved silently. We'll never talk to the CFO, but the CFO is going to have a big impact on the decision, CEO, CRO, marketing team members. And so how are you able to surround those key people? I like LinkedIn ads because the targeting is so good and the cost is low. You're only targeting like 7 people, and being able to target those people specifically to move them forward. But it's a super complex topic. I also believe, as a person that does both marketing and sales and customer success, that's like understanding the other decision makers is totally a primary responsibility of the salesperson. Understanding who are the blockers and those types of things, and being able to address those. So I love the idea that marketing needs to help, but sellers need to be able to manage their own the process and be able to do that. You got time for one more, or are we over?
Yeah, we got time for one more? Yeah? Okay. Oh.
I'll repeat the question, or Mike's right there.
So self-reported attribution's tedious. How do you sort of operationalize it so it's not just a guy, exporting Salesforce data, bringing it into Google Sheets, and then it takes 2 hours, 4 hours? I'm sure you've come up with a way to operationalize it.
Sure have. Yeah, so I personally installed this on our website. I was on a flight, and I was like, we keep running into this issue. We need to figure out how to solve it. I'm putting this on our forum and seeing what happens. And we collected that data, and I was looking at a spreadsheet just like you said, and then started to see the patterns and then build automation inside of HubSpot, right? So we have a how did you hear about us field where it's the raw text that someone puts in. And then we have automation that's looking for, did they say podcast? Did they say revenue vitals? Did they say state of demand gen? Did they say a person's name? And we look for those words and then automatically categorize them into the buckets that I showed. So you can just look at does the text match? Does it say podcast or other things? And then group it into podcast. It'll get you 95% of the way there, and it's basically free. And then you can manually clean up the other ones and add more automation. So that's like a Rev 1. And I built that in less than a day, and it makes it so people say, oh, we can't run self-reported attribution because we get 5,000 conversions a month, right? There's too much volume, we're not going to know what to do. And this is a way to resolve it. Another thing that I'll say, and is emerging, and I haven't talked about much, is that I believe that AI will be very, very, very good at sentiment analysis. And I believe that if we're able to feed it all of those responses in a sheet, that it'll be able to come back to us with a pie chart or a graph or a sentiment about what are the places that what are the things that people are seeing that would remove the manual analysis. So my hope is that one area that AI can help with is in analyzing these things. As a side note, we built a Salesforce app that does all of this automatically. So not only at the leader contact level, but then connecting it to opportunities, tracking it all the way to revenue, and managing both demand capture and demand creation attribution. That's in a beta right now.
Thank you.
Awesome. Great.
Cool.
Hey,
Thanks everyone. Love that you're here.
If anybody wanted to ask you, because there's probably some more questions and some came in here, how can people reach you and
yeah, I'll hang around here for about 30 minutes over here. So if you all want to talk about something more specific or you didn't feel comfortable asking the question in public, feel free to find me over there. I'd love to chat.
Okay, awesome.
Thanks,
Fantastic.
everyone.
Fantastic.